country, Cameroon.
This is a message from Royal FM, the listeners' radio.
Il est 14h.
Planifie tes appels vers tous les réseaux sans calcul. C'est moins cher et à prix unique. Tape dièse 200 dièse.
Subscribe to Masuk for a strong and prosperous economy.
The 2Pm Newscast
with
Mapala Zita.
Good afternoon, good people. Welcome to today's Royal Afternoon Edition, the 2 p.m. news on 88.4 Royal FM and live on YouTube at Royal FM Cameroon. The headlines. Former presidential candidate Barrister Akere Muna has appealed to President Paul Biya and the Vatican for clemency on detainees connected to the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon.
That gives the Vatican an opportunity to be able to weigh in our process from the point of view of reconciliation and trying to see what concessions it can extract from the powers that be.
Plus, the killer of 5-year-old Bebe Mathis Nwafo Dagobert has been found guilty and sentenced to death by firing squad. Out of Cameroon, Congo and Rwanda agreed to take concrete steps to ease tensions between both countries. And in sports, 19-year-old Angel Yonjo is among players called up by coach David Pagu for the second edition of the FIFA series. Ladies and gentlemen, those were our top stories. Details in a moment. Welcome to the 2 p.m. news. My name is Mapala Zita. Barrister Akere Muna has called for humanitarian and reconsideration measures on the eve of Pope Leo XIV's visit to Cameroon. The former presidential candidate appealed to the President of the Republic and the authorities under this office for the release of detainees in connection with the Anglophone crisis and post-electoral protests. Our political and economic reporter Evans Williams Njobati has the report.
Made public in a letter, Barrister Akere Muna, human rights advocate and former presidential candidate, appealed to the head of state, Paul Biya, to grant pardon to inmates arrested during the Anglophone crisis and post-electoral tension.
Seize the opportunity to see how we can get the head of state to start a process of healing and where we can release all the Cameroonians who are incarcerated and all these other issues. That will give a real indicator that we need to reconcile and move forward. Is to look for a path to peace, help the common person who just wants to live from day to day.
The lawyer at the Bar Council equally notes that the papal visit could be the right moment to end the persistent crisis as well as create a new chapter.
Visit of the Pope is a golden opportunity because it's a spiritual visit, diplomatic, and the context is political. This is the fourth papal visit we are having. That shows that in the eyes of the Vatican, Cameroon has some kind of importance. And also, I think that gives the Vatican an opportunity to be able to weigh in our process from the point of view of reconciliation and trying to see what concessions it can.
Barrister Akere Muna, in conclusion, is certain this visit will not only act as a religious visit, but also reconcile minds for a return to peace.
I think the visit of the Pope is an opportunity. That's why I'm not very much in accordance with those who thought they should ask the Pope not to come to Cameroon. It's not very, very helpful. I know that the Pope refused to go to his own home country, the United States, for political reasons, but I think that for us, the visit of the Pope is an opportunity rather than an obstacle.
As a reminder, last January, the attorney, in a formal letter and statement titled A New Dawn, urged the Biya government to take immediate and courageous steps towards national reconciliation.
An initiative to combat abnormal financial practices within the economic and monetary community of Central African states has been launched by the Regional Institute of Statistics and Applied Economics, funded by the European Union. The Regional Observatory of Abnormal Practices on the main corridors of Central Africa focuses at reinforcing oversight, promoting sound financial behaviors across member states at a time of concerns over irregular transactions and governance challenges that weigh on the economic stability of the region. Jeffrey Tachum had an exchange with some experts who explained how this initiative can contribute in fighting malpractices in the CEMAC zone.
For Jamo Haiwang, research analyst at the Cameroon Economic Policy Institute, this initiative is important as financial malpractices in the CEMAC zone are often linked to weak statistical systems, limited transparency, and insufficient data sharing between institutions.
When reliable economic and financial data are lacking, it becomes easier for illicit financial flows, tax evasion, and corruption to remain undetected. By strengthening statistical capacity and economic analysis, the initiative led by the Institut Sous-Régional de Statistique et d'Économie Appliquée can significantly improve the quality of public financial monitoring.
Meanwhile, Valerie Asundeb is of the idea that irregular financial flows become easier to detect and patterns of fraud more identifiable by authorities.
By strengthening statistical systems and economic analysis, it becomes easier for authorities to detect irregular financial flows, identify patterns of fraud, and monitor compliance with financial
are very low.
An institution like ISE is well placed to help support policymakers or businesses and entrepreneurs to strengthen financial literacy and improve transparency. I don't think the immediate impacts of this initiative would be felt for many, many years because they are a small institution, actually, a private university, so they're not really a government entity with backing to implement country and continent-wide policy.
According to the African Development Bank and the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Africa loses nearly $88 billion annually due to illicit financial practices. A large share of these flows originate from weaknesses in government, data systems, and regulatory oversight.
Onto something else, the 4th General Agriculture and Livestock Census will take place in Cameroon from April the 24th to May the 29th, 2026. The agricultural census, conducted jointly with the 4th General Population and Housing Census, has as objective to provide updated data on the agricultural and livestock sector, which employs about 70% of the workforce. In the excerpt that follows, experts in agriculture, Wendy Emmanuel, sheds light on the impacts of the count on the agro-pastoral sector. He spoke on the microphone of Glory Ngange.
When the government gets accurate information, it helps in market trends and forecasting, thereby giving the farmers the assurance to cultivate their produce and to know that at this particular time, the population will so much need this, giving insight into the production patterns, helping farmers and traders, policy makers to better predict the market. Months ago, you can see that tomatoes farmers, they face a lot of serious problems where a basket of tomatoes was sold for 500 francs. Just to say, one farmer who developed heart attack and died because of the heavy loans that he took and invested in tomatoes farming, and at the end of the day he could not. And when the government also carries out an agricultural census, it helps in resource allocation. When data is collected in the field, it helps the government to take informed decisions on how resources or how funding, subsidies, infrastructural development can be given to the farmers, thereby helping farmers to boost their productivity. The farmers face problems with funding, subsidies, and they also face problems with farm to market route. If you can go to some regions in Cameroon and you see how some farmers contribute to food insecurity, you'll be shocked. It is only when the government carries out an agricultural census, they disguise and they send agricultural extension workers, they go to the field and they see how these farmers they do. They can better look for ways in which to improve the food availability improve the ways in which this food cultivation is being done, and thereby helping farmers to cultivate what is going to help them and to fight against the health ills that we are facing now due to the food we consume.
And still to come in this newscast, Nwafo Dagobert receives the death sentence by firing squad for the murder of 5-year-old Wandi Mattis.
In reality, de facto moratorium has suspended all execution for decades now in this country.
Welcome back. If you are just tuning in, you are listening to the 2 p.m. news on Royal FM. Cameroon's Public Works Minister Emmanuel Nganonjo Messi has from this day begun a 2-day inspection of major ongoing infrastructural projects in the west and northwest regions. The minister's first stop is at the Chancliffe, where emergency stabilization works are being carried to reduce landslide threats. Next visit will be to the Babaju-Bamenda Highway, particularly to examine progress on the urban crossing section, this ahead of the papal visit to Cameroon. We now talk education, where a physical and biometric census is ongoing across public secondary schools nationwide. The exercise, which also includes those on study leave, started on March the 9th and will last till April the 8th, 2026. The initiative aims at updating information for all Ministry of Secondary Education personnel to improve the payroll and curb absentee issues. Reactions of those concerned with our youth and education reporter, Glory Ngange.
According to a press release made public by Professor Pauline Nalova-Lyonga of the Ministry of Secondary Education, the exercise involves teachers and other personnel paid from the MINISEC budget, an initiative which many government secondary school teachers, including Leroy Elume, say is timely.
It's a much needed census because staff information was updated since the year 2021. We have staff whose service numbers cannot be identified on the platforms to also identify teachers who've abandoned their duty posts and are milking the state of its coffers, receiving pay without rendering the required services.
Kengafak Exodus also highlights that the campaign goes beyond being a trap. It is a form of restructuring in the sector.
This exercise gives an opportunity to update our professional information, correct possible errors, and ensure that every teacher is properly accounted for within the system. I see it as a step towards modernization and transparency in the management of human resources in the educational sector. It also reassures committed teachers like myself that the government is making effort to recognize and protect legitimate workers.
Nevertheless, many have doubted the success of this exercise, judging from the irregularities that have been noticed in the subsector. One of them opted for anonymity.
She can only ensure that workers put under her by the state works well, which is just checking to know who are actually at their job post and if they are doing their job well. We think that there is some sort of an injustice because there are teachers who are actually not on seat because a lot have been traveling out, but each time the other fiscal censuses are done, you wouldn't find them being sanctioned, which means that they are being covered by somebody.
Talking about the impacts of the current censorship exercise, Leroy Elume points out that
it's coming at a time when students of examination classes are being evaluated. They are currently taking on their regional mock, which requires much attention. So right now, some teachers have divided attention, going after the census, trying to update their information, make sure they have all the required documents, also trying to pay attention that they get their students prepared and invigilate the ongoing regional mock.
Since the start of the survey, some challenges that like inaccessibility to the MINISEC website and technical failures have been recorded, especially in remote areas.
Glory Ngange in that report. And on to some religious news. The feast of Eid al-Fitr will be celebrated in Cameroon tomorrow, Friday, March the 20th, 2026. According to an announcement by the National Moon Crescents Commission, the moon marking the end of Ramadan has not been sighted in Cameroon or elsewhere. indicating that the fasting period will be completed to 30 days today. Therefore, the Muslim community in Cameroon will join their peers worldwide to celebrate the feast tomorrow. On to one of our lead stories. Nwafo Dagobert has received a death sentence by firing squad following his conviction for the murder of 5-year-old Wandi Matisse in May 2025. The court also ordered the guilty to pay 500 million francs CFA in damages and 25 million francs for legal fees. Following this development, our society reporter Ngang Nadej spoke to an expert to get more clarifications on the case. Here is her report.
The verdict was delivered on Wednesday, March 18, 2026 in the Funzi High Court in Yaoundé as a partial verdict. Eva Etonge-Mayer is a civil society activist.
The death penalty or capital punishment is the legal execution of a person convicted of an exceptionally grave crime. Cameroon maintains its legislative sovereignty on upholding the death penalty under Article 18 of the 2016 Penal Code and the 2014 Anti-Terrorism Law. However, the country observed a de facto moratorium regarding actual executions.
In Cameroon, death penalty cases are handled through a rigorous process, as the expert explains.
Legally, execution must follow a strict protocol to prevent any form of arbitrariness. It can only be pronounced by a competent court following a fair trial. In Cameroon, execution is carried out by gunfire. It is technically public and solemn unless authorities decide otherwise, in which case it occurs before official witnesses such as magistrates, medical doctors, and religious leaders. In reality, de facto moratorium has suspended all execution for decades now in this country.
Cameroon retains the death penalty law, but in practice hasn't carried out executions since 1997, largely due to international pressure and human rights commitments.
Although courts continue to pronounce death sentences, no execution has taken place since the late 1990s due to several factors. Execution will diplomatically isolate Cameroon, given the human rights treaties this country has ratified. No execution can proceed without the presidency's signature. The absence of an execution decree effectively held the process.
Eva Etonge-Mayer concludes by highlighting that the accused can still appear before the courts for final judgment or appeal proceedings, allowing them to present their case or contest the verdict before the president's decision on clemency.
The right to appeal is a fundamental principle. A convict can appeal to the Court of Appeal and subsequently file a petition with the Supreme Court. This is the final stage. Even after all judiciary options are exhausted, the file is systematically sent to the head of state until the president decides on commutation, maybe to life imprisonment or execution. The prisoner remains in detention.
According to the court's findings, Dagobert stabbed Matisse multiple times after an altercation with the child's father at a drinking spot, resulting in the child's death en route to the hospital. Though the accused claimed to have committed the act under the influence of alcohol, witnesses testified that the act appeared to be premeditated.
We stay within the society with this human interest story to see that a 23-year-old young woman has been arrested after she organized her own kidnap, requesting the sum of 6 million francs CFA from her family to travel to Canada to meet her boyfriend. According to reports, the girl was found in Ebolova by the forces of law and order, where she planned everything with the help of her cousin. But just what can account for such behaviors from a 23-year-old girl, and how can it be managed? Fringwe Crispin spoke with a sociologist and now reports.
The sociologist Ngwenye Victorine begins by condemning the 23-year-old young woman for committing such an act, especially to her family.
The girl who has committed such an act is actually a bandit. She is a thief. For no reason on earth is crime ever justified. If you take what does not belong to you, either by force or by tricks or by what, theft, and it has to be punished. For a person to be able to do that, it means that the girl, she has traits of theft in her. She has a mentality of a thief. That's why she is able to do that.
In order to prevent such phenomenon from occurring in future, the sociologist reviews,
we just need to teach our children morals. We teach them morals and we leave the rest to God, because those thieves you see out there is not because they don't know the difference between good and bad. Most of them, they know, but they have decided to be so. Because now we'll say, okay, the morals of the society have fallen. What happens in those days of old when morals were really high? We still had thieves in society.
As a result, the experts reiterate that
somebody is actually inclined towards theft. We have people who have their minds inclined towards theft. They have their minds inclined towards taking something that does not belong to her. We have people who have their minds inclined towards using tricks or force to take what does not belong to them.
It is worth noting that this phenomenon of young people stimulating their own kidnapped for ransom comes to add to many others already recorded in the society.
Out of Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have agreed to take concrete steps to ease tensions amid stalled peace process after talks hosted by the USA in Washington. The pledge to ease tension comes after the United States earlier this month sanctioned the Rwandan Defense Forces and 4 senior officials, accusing Rwanda of directly supporting the M23 rebel group, blaming it for escalating the conflict in eastern DR Congo. US President Donald Trump has today threatened to blow up a major gas field in Iran if it attacks the US's Gulf Arab ally Qatar again. Trump's threats come after a day in which Israel hit Iran's South Pass, part of the world's largest natural gas field, and Tehran retaliated by striking the Ras Laffan site in Qatar between last night and this morning, causing extensive damage and leading to a spike in energy prices. While Israel has not officially confirmed its attack on the Iranian gas field, Mr. Trump said the U.S. knew nothing about its ally, which had violently lashed out on Iran out of anger. Let's take sports after this break. Sportsman Biwa Brian has joined me. Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon, Mapalazita.
Indomitable Lions head coach David Pagu has officially unveiled the list of selected players for the upcoming second edition of the FIFA series coming up this month, and you have details.
A total of 26 players have been summoned by the head coach Pagu David ahead of Cameroon's participation at the second edition of the FIFA series. The goalkeepers include Bondly Noke, Simon Ngapa Ndwedbu, and Usieni Usmanu. The defenders include Samuel Junior Koto, Emmanuel Mungam, Jackson Chachwa, Olivier Kandem, Stefan Paul Keller, Nagida Muhammadu, Serge Valerie Lundu Nzono, Kevin Kiben, Darling Yongwa, and Che Malon Fondo. The midfielders include Seydou Alum Mubarak, Ryan Gloafotso Yemfak, Atu Avom, Mael Fernandez Monyebe, Fidel Brice Abina, Dani Namaso, Conrad Fansu, Anod Mael Kandem. To lead the line is 3 players who have been selected at the forefront, where we have Christian Kofani, Carl Eta Eyong, and Dorinel Angel Yonjo Mata. The standout inclusion in Coach Pagu David's list is undoubtedly the inclusion of 19-year-old Angel Yonjo. At just 19, the prolific forward has already blazed through various categories of Cameroon's national ranks, remarkably the under-17 national team, the under-20, as well as the intermediate Lions level. Joining the teenage sensation are 4 prominent Elite 1 figures, including Gazelle's duo of Usieni Usmanu and Mael Fernandez, alongside AS Fortuna's Elundu Nzomo and Conrad Fanso of Panthers Sportif Dundee. Lambert Onana takes special interest in the Elite 1 players summoned by Coach Pagu David.
For home-based players, is that enough? I think with the championship which we have, we're entering match day 10. For me, I believe it's enough because the level of the championship compared to the players who are playing out of the country too. David Pago selecting 4 players, and we believe that these 4 players are going to have minutes. It's very important, and it's very important, especially as they are young players. They are not aging players; they are young players. It shows that anyone in the championship can have an opportunity to feature for the men's A team. It's also a big boost to the other players in the championship. We have players like Belobo who are coming back in form. We have Nathan Douala who have been having good 2 outings. So I believe it is a very good decision by the Indomitable Lions coach David Pago to call in these 4 players.
And in elite football, match day 10th of the Elite One Championship will wrap up today with 2 delayed fixtures, Brian.
The Fireboys of Fazu Elite will play visiting fixture against Aigle Royal of Mongo, while Victoria United of Limbe will host Panthère Sportive Dundee at Dengeme Omnisport Stadium in Limbe. The set fixtures add to earlier fixture stage yesterday where Colombe Sportive and Canong of Yaoundé played a 1-1 draw. Unisport beat Stade Renard of Melong by 2-1. PWD of Baminda and AS Fortune Onfo played a 0-0 draw, adding to 2 advanced fixtures played up north between Gazelle and Aigle Royal of Menua, a fixture which ended with a win for Gazelle Football Club on a margin of 2-1. Kotong Sport of Garo on their part beat Dynamo Football Club of Douala by 2-1. And after the said result, the current classification table has Unisport of Onkam, who have maintained their position as front runners with 20 points. They are closely followed by Kotong Sport, Gazelle, PWD and Dynamo, who make up the top 5, while the tail end of the classification table is the Fireboys of Fazu Elite and Aigle Royal of Mongo.
And over in Europe, Brian, you see the brackets for the UEFA Champions League quarterfinals is now complete following the round of 16 played last evening.
The road to European glory is now set as the UEFA Champions League quarter-final bracket was finalized yesterday, Wednesday, March 18, following the conclusion of the round of 16. Defending champions Paris Saint-Germain are set for a heavyweight clash against Liverpool, who dramatically overturned a first-leg deficit to advance to the next stage. On the same side of the bracket, Real Madrid will face Bayern Munich in a meeting between 200% win rate sides from the league phase of the competition. The opposite side of the draw features an all-Spanish showdown between Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, while Arsenal will take on Portuguese giant Sporting CP. These 2-leg ties are scheduled to take place on April 7 to April 8 and April 14 to April 15, 2026.
Francine Ateba has joined me in the studio with a summary of this newscast in the French language. Bon après-midi, Francine.
Good afternoon, Mapalazita. Affaire bébé Matisse. Près d'1 an après les faits, le tribunal de grande instance de Yaoundé a rendu son verdict. Monsieur Noafo Dagobert a été reconnu coupable hier par l'instance judiciaire et condamné à la peine de mort par fusillade couplée d'une amende de 525 millions de francs CFA à reverser à la famille et à l'État pour dommages et intérêts. Une sentence qui suscite des interrogations sur les conditions de son application. Toujours en société, Owona Juliette, âgée de 23 ans, voulait retrouver son compagnon au Canada pour se faire tout simplement de passer de bons moments ensemble. La jeune fille a orchestré avec l'aide de son cousin son enlèvement à Ebolova, région du Sud, pour stocké à sa famille la somme de 6 millions de francs CFA. Mais à la place, elle a gagné la prison. Une simulation d'enlèvement qui met au centre des débats l'amour des jeunes pour le gain facile, d'où l'éclairage d'un psychologue et d'un sociologue. À l'étranger, Donald Trump affirme qu'Israël ne frappera plus le gisement gazier iranien après sa violente riposte. Le président américain a déclaré qu'Israël, agissant le coup de la colère, avait violemment riposté en attaquant le principal gisement de gaz de l'Iran. Cette offensive marque une escalade majeure dans le conflit israélo-américain contre Téhéran. En sport, le sélectionneur des Lions indomptables David Pagou a dévoilé sa liste des joueurs pour la FIFA Série 2026. C'était ce jeudi 19 mars 2026. Il s'agit d'une liste de 27 joueurs, dont 10 nouveaux, parmi lesquels 4 du championnat local. Les grands absents sont tout simplement Nuotolo, Carlos Baleba, Christopher Wo, Christian Bassogok et Franck Magritte. Entre autres, les joueurs présents sont David Epassi, Christian Kofane, Brian Bemo, Dani Namasso, entre autres. Les périodes FIFA du mois de mars, il s'agit précisément des matchs amicaux.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the package we compiled for you this afternoon. The 2 p.m. news received technical assistance from Romuald Ekume. Brian Bida was behind the cameras for our social media live video. Production assistance Ngang Nadej. Script editing and editorial coaching Abel Bella Samari. Central coordination Roger Kiek, our station manager, and general supervision by the Reverend Pastor Bisai Emmanuel Noel. For news editing and presentation, my name is Mapala Zita. Thank you all for listening, and you have a pleasant afternoon in the company of programs over Royal FM. More news comes up at 6 p.m., which of course will be a bilingual edition. But before then, you will be entertained to good music in the next 30 minutes or so. And at 3 p.m., Flora Goyam will be here for the program Miroir Sociétal. I apologize for the bad voice, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned and stay blessed.